Rivers play an essential role in all our lives in many different ways.
Rivers are very important. They're important habitats for a wide variety of species. People like to use rivers as an amenity. In the past, they've been absolutely key to our industrial heritage and our industrial development. Rivers underpin everything we do.
The legacy of the Industrial Revolution in the Derbyshire area is both an asset in terms of history, but a hindrance in terms of improving our rivers. The old weirs left from the early mills and cotton industry caused many problems. Sluggish water and poor habitats immediately above them, and a barrier to many species of fish attempting to migrate upstream to reach better feeding and spawning grounds.
At Darley Abbey, there's a weir that fish can't get past, and it's a very historic feature. And so we've been working with the World Heritage Site people to try and find a solution which still leaves that iconic view and status of the heritage and celebrates it, and creates a solution that lets the fish past.
Darley Abbey lies just north of Derby on the River Derwent and forms part of the River Trent catchment area. Building the fish pass brought together many different partners and an unlikely mix of concrete, steel, machines, wildlife and history. And it's the Trent Rivers Trust who, after securing funding through the government's Catchment Restoration Fund, have taken on board the job of managing and delivering the entire project.
Trent Rivers Trust is a registered charity. We work with a lot of different organisations, and our aims and objectives are to protect, enhance and improve the rivers and streams in the Trent catchment. Darley Abbey project is hugely significant for the Trent Rivers Trust. It is a massive civil engineering and technical project. The River Derwent is a World Heritage Site, so to try and build and design a fish pass that protects the World Heritage Site but also improves the environment for fish and other wildlife is a challenge, and it's one that we've met, and we're really pleased to have done that.
With such a difficult challenge, the Trent Rivers Trust sought a design team with the right level of experience who could help take the project forward.
Fishtek offer a one-stop shop, if you like, from the initial concept right through to completion of the project. It includes obviously fish pass designs, consenting of fish passes, getting the designs through the National Fish Pass Panel approval process. Darley Abbey was probably one of the more complex fish pass projects we've been involved with. Because the structure's listed, we needed to factor in the listed status that imposed other constraints on the design.
There was an initial feasibility, and that identified the island in the middle of the weir as the optimal location for the fish pass. So we were then brought in to do the detailed design, so the hydraulic calculations, work out how big the pass should be, what structure it should have, and the type of fish pass.
Ideally, the best solution is to remove the weir entirely. However, this wasn't possible at Darley Abbey, and so the solution involved excavating a trench through the island from the upstream end to downstream and installing the fish pass in the newly formed channel. This meant all the historic structures of the weir could be left untouched and intact. However, the type of fish pass to be installed was also an important consideration.
The solution we went with was this pass called a Lorinier fish pass. And it's a pass normally constructed from concrete with these herringbone-shaped baffles on the base. These are bolted directly into a concrete channel, and they slow the water down and create these vertical helical currents within the water and improve the conditions of fish migration upstream.
The Lorinier pass for this site was the most appropriate in terms of an efficient fish pass for the range of species that are found in the Derwent. The fish pass has to be suitable for the weaker swimming coarse fish. It can take a reasonable flow, and it fitted relatively neatly within the footprint of the island as well. It was the optimum design.
Once we've got all the consents in place, you then move on to actually building it and make sure that what we've designed and produced drawings for is actually built.
You need a contractor who knows how to form concrete elements, quite complex concrete elements, and who has that experience of working in the river environment. And you've got to bring all this together in quite a sensitive environment in terms of it's in a river, but also it's in a World Heritage Site. So we've got all those sort of elements to consider.
And after a competitive tender process managed by the Trent Rivers Trust with help from Fishtek, a locally based company with the right mix of skills, enthusiasm and experience, was appointed.
AV Squires Plant Company Limited are a plant hire company and started a small civil engineering company. Within the first 3 to 4 years, the fish pass work was offered to us. We tendered and were successful in that tender, which we saw as a really good challenge. And the interrelationship with the Environment Agency and with World Heritage, we embraced that challenge and brought it through with great teamwork, use that as a benchmark for bigger and brighter things for the business.
The main structure was to be built in 4 clear stages. First, the top end, where the river would enter. This featured a number of complex angles and slopes. Next, the upper ramp section, set at an incline of 15%. In the middle, because of the overall length, there was a resting pool, followed by the lower ramp section, with a rip-rap stone entrance at the bottom. All of this wasn't a particularly unusual build, but being set on an island presented a number of different challenges.
There's no difference in concreting on the ground and concreting in the middle of an island. The only difference is getting your concrete over there.
With most construction projects, the building is often the easy part. The difficult parts are usually access and just keeping everyone happy.
The access, what we had to do, we actually went onto a green field. We built some what they call bog mats, so we didn't disrupt the actual ground.
Access on and off the island was one of the biggest challenges for the construction team, but with a new temporary stone ramp constructed, the machines were able to track back and forth across the riverbed. For the construction team, a semi-derelict footbridge over one of the weirs was brought back into use to allow foot access on and off the site. And after the initial removal of some trees to make room for the fish pass, it would be down to the on-site team of Frank, Lewis and Ryan to get the job built.
The first part of the works was to install a cofferdam around where the fish pass was going to cut through the existing head wall.
Building the cofferdam meant working carefully and safely in the river, drilling in 7-metre long piles to reach the clay base and seal off the flow. However, water has a habit of getting everywhere, and initially a few leaks did spring up. On-site pumps were brought in to keep the situation under control.
Once we'd done the cofferdam, then we had to cut the actual existing wall, big stone wall there. We had to cut that, break that out and excavate down to the level for the actual start of the base. And then everything built up from the base upwards.
At this point, some of the old stones extracted were kept to one side. These would be used later to reinstate a new wall over the top of the fish pass to help retain the same overall historic look. And the construction work continued.
A lot of hard work went into the top part. Fair play to my lads, they did an absolute brilliant job. Setting out, getting levels. Once we'd done all the levels, they basically built the actual structure.
Once they've excavated the head wall and they've excavated the upstream part of the fish pass down to formation level, they'll then construct shuttering to the required profile. The top end is quite a key part, simply because at that location it will set out the rest of the fish pass.
And a few days later, the floor is taking shape. Improving our rivers is the responsibility of the Environment Agency, working together with many partners as part of the EU Water Framework Directive.
We're doing fish passes to help improve the state of the rivers, because not only do they allow fish movement, but they also have other biodiversity gains and help with water quality. It opens up stretches of the catchment to allow fish to get to those valuable habitats, and in doing so improve populations within that river and species diversity.
Our role really is a real partner with the statutory agencies. So where this comes from is there's European legislation to say we must improve our rivers, and that's called the Water Framework Directive. And if we don't improve our rivers, we will end up getting fined ultimately. The Environment Agency and DEFRA were keen to work with voluntary organisations because we can bring in other sources of funding and we can do things in a more cost-effective way quite often.
Back on site, and the construction work continued.
There's a number of sort of complicated concrete features, such as the stop log slots, the camera recesses, and also it needed to tie into the existing head wall.
There's a lot of strange shapes and angles on the top end. The shuttering, we actually constructed it on site. We got the level of the actual contour of the angle of the top walls, made them up with what they call a fillet. Basically screw or nail them onto your shutters, and that basically gives you the angle of your finished concrete level.
They'll then fix the steel reinforcement, and then that'll be ready to pour the concrete to form the actual shape.
On the length of the wall and on the actual width of the wall, we only had 20 millimetres to play with from top to bottom. Basically, everything had to be critical on the first section.
Pouring concrete on the level is one thing. However, getting it to set at a 15% angle is a completely different matter.
And you have to get what they call slumpage. You have to get the slumpage right. Then you bring it over on the machine with a concrete skip. So every single bit of concrete had to be taken over.
Getting the concrete in is a race against time and required numerous trips back and forth across the river. Finally, smoothing off and bringing it up to the level of the fillet all had to be done just at the right time, so that the concrete at the top of the wall would set at the required slope. All in all, things were looking good, and so it was on to the next stage for Frank, Lewis and Ryan to remove the shuttering and reveal the fruits of their labours.
Once we'd done the first stage that brought us up above the water level, we actually formed what they call stop block channels, and we utilised the stop block channels and put a metal road plate with rubber seals on, basically as a stop block, and kept the actual dig dry.
What went in had to come out. With the pumps turned off, the river had already come onto the temporary stop log. However, the weather had changed, and with the river running very high and fast, it was down to Frank to don the waders and to get wet once again. One by one, slowly but surely, the 7-metre piles were gradually taken out. Of course, the entire construction of the fish pass at Darley Abbey has been influenced by the historical significance of the mills and weirs of the Derwent Valley. Now a World Heritage Site, it's easy to see why the area had such an important role to play in our industrial past.
This is the birthplace of the factory system. The Derwent Valley was where it all started because really of the power of the River Derwent. They knew that they would always have enough water to power those mills. You've got Richard Arkwright and his contemporaries putting together a system which came under one particular power source, water. Water power is absolutely a key part of what this World Heritage Site is about, and the factories that were powered by those water wheels, and the way that they harnessed it was by putting in a series of weirs so that they could have that water held back, creating a head that powered all these water wheels. Arkwright was developing a way of mechanising all the stages. There's something like 14 stages to producing cotton thread. All of them, for the first time anywhere in the world, the whole process was automated. That's when you've got a factory. One power source, and that's the water.
And during the next stage of the build, the island began to reveal some interesting historical secrets of its own. As part of the project, Trent Rivers Trust had put an archaeological watching brief in place, and as digging continued, The uncovering of these wooden posts suggested that there had been a previous diversion of the river as far back as medieval times. It was useful to be able to remove as much as possible, and one particular post looked very interesting. Can we have this one, please? It was going to take some careful teamwork to remove it. A bit of kicking, digging, pulling, pushing, and finally a huge lift brought the entire post out, and incredibly fully intact, something that would make any archaeologist smile.
Ever's happy now. You're happy, aren't you?
The discoveries are thought to be nationally significant, revealing aspects of life back in medieval times. And as part of the Trent Rivers Trust's responsibilities, everything found was recorded, measured, photographed, and where possible taken away for further investigation to help piece together the story of what life had been like at Darley Abbey centuries before. After all of this, it was on with the job. Whilst the building of the top end had required purpose-built formwork, the shuttering on the remaining stages was much more straightforward, and the team at AV Squires came up with a neat solution to use quick form shuttering and save time.
I've used an awful lot of shuttering work myself and came up with the actual, what they call frammy frames, the quick form shuttering. We designed a drawing for that and it worked a treat.
And where the river enters the fish pass, a new wall was constructed over the entrance using some of the original stones taken out when the wall was first cut through.
What was agreed was that we'd cut that channel to build the fish pass, but then we would put back over the top of the channel the original stone from that wall.
We put RSJs across, built the actual stone wall back on, and then it just kept at the water level.
And whilst stonemasons chiselled, cut and hammered, the concrete started to arrive. Once again, it was all go. The fish pass is built to enable many different species of fish found in the river to move upstream and into different diverse habitats, such as the area around the Ecclesbourne, a significant tributary of the Derwent.
We see the Darley Abbey Fish Pass as being a great benefit for fish first and foremost. They'll be able to get past that obstacle and they'll be able to reach lovely areas like this in the river that previously they couldn't have done. This environment here has got a real variety of habitats for fish. It's got gravels, it's got deep pools, it's got overhanging trees where fish can hide. So that fish pass will allow fish to travel another 5 miles or so up the Derwent. So from the wildlife point of view, there's huge benefits. And as I say, for us it's also about engaging with the public and with other building partnerships so that together we can do more to help our rivers.
Back on site, and as the Works Committee made their inspection, the construction was nearing completion. And it's more steelwork, shuttering and concrete. But the whole build is making good progress, with the final piece of the jigsaw being the Larinier baffles themselves. Manufactured off-site by Hutchinson's engineers, the crucial factor was to have the right tooling to create a rounded profile to the top of the baffles. This would prevent any damage or injury to fish swimming over them. After being bent to the correct angle, all sharp edges are removed and the angled baffles welded to steel base plates. The final task was to galvanise them as a protection against rust. Once transported to the fish pass at Darley Abbey, each baffle plate was lowered carefully into place and bolted down one by one.
The size of the pass is actually very large at Darley Abbey. It's 3 metres wide. It needs to be so large because the River Derwent at this site is a very large river. One of your primary aims is to actually convince fish that they're staying in the river. So you need to mimic the natural conditions in the river whenever you design a fish pass, and that's why the pass is the size it is.
With a little tidying up, stonework dropped in to form the riprap entrance to help the fish enter the pass, and finishing touches around the edges, it was time to pull the plug and let the water flow. The whole project has been a significant achievement for the Trent Rivers Trust and its many partners.
I think the biggest challenge is ensuring the client is happy, gets the fish pass they want, and hopefully within the budget.
We felt it was an achievement. It's one thing that we do pride ourselves on.
Really, a river is a whole kind of microcosm of the world, really, and we're trying to tackle it in different distinctive ways. And what Trent Rivers Trust wants to do is make that difference with all the people involved, with the public, with the different organisations, make a difference so that our river becomes, over time, a better place for everybody and everything.
The future of Trent Rivers Trust is to take more of these projects forward, building on the experience that we've had to date, whether this be fish passage or in-stream river improvements. As a charity which exists to improve the river environment, we are ideally placed to coordinate and deliver projects such as this in the future.
And so, after 2 centuries of industrial history at Darley Abbey, the fish are able to pass upstream once again. And with ongoing monitoring using underwater cameras, it may not be too long before sites like these will be seen in the fish pass at Darley Abbey.